This is Jonathan Agger, fifth Pro Boxing Fans, joined by Sean Mccomb, super lightweight contender. Sean, before we talk about the boxing, I've noticed you're doing your podcast on YouTube and things. How's that going?
Yeah, I've been very busy. Between I own my own gym as well, which is, we have about 100 members in. I have the podcast and I've got my own training going, so pretty busy, but it's all going well and it keeps me level headed.
That's the public nuisance podcast. If people want to check that out on YouTube, Sean, you got back with a win a couple months ago now. Obviously, a guy that you probably went in thinking and knowing you would beat, but I guess still good to get some of that ring rust off.
Yeah, you know what? Opponents like that are very dangerous, they're just coming and swinging and it's very easy to catch an injury against these guys. So my objective to go in there was to go in and not get hit and just enjoy the performance and just get back onto those dates. It was, 14 months out of the ring. So it was very important to just get back in and just enjoy the performance, enjoy being part of that fight week and get that feeling back again. And the goal was not to take any shots, which I felt I done in the fight. So all good on my end.
Mm. After the Barboza fight, which most people thought you won, were there any talks for a rematch with him?
Absolutely none until, you know what, before the final bell went. No, sorry, after the final bell and before the decision, that way in between, his father says me, we gotta run it back, we gotta run it back. And then when the decision came out that he won, they said it's not up to us, it's up to the promoter. So it was immediately just shut down right away. There was I believe, because he was the champion, and his contract there was an immediate rematch clause for him if he lost, but not for me if I won or if I lost. Sorry. So nah, there was no talk of any rematch at all. We appealed the decision, but nothing ever came off it.
When you look at where his career's gone, he's had at least two big fights since your fight, and he's done well in them. But is it frustrating? Do you look at it like that, or do you just see it as that's his career and you're doing your career?
You know what? It's more frustrating that knowing what I'm capable of and still not getting any any promotional backing or any big fights. It's more frustrating, and like uh, only for Izzy coming in and Otto get me that partnership up with Izzy and GBM boxing that I still would have no promotional backing. I would still have no fights. So it's the first time that I've ever had a promoter, and it just feels good to have that security now in my career.
What have you been told in terms of the names they can actually get you?
I haven't told anything specifically. It's just been that what I've been told is I will be busy. Um, they got me the fight in Hull. They plan to have me out in September again, and they're already speaking about a date in November or December. So one thing that he spoke to me about was he will keep me busy and he will give me shows. I mean, I'm near sure he's got a good fight secured for me for September. I just don't know if that's been finalised yet, so I can't really speak about it. But if it's very, very close to being finalised if it hasn't been done so already, and then that puts me right back up there. It's a good step for me.
Now, there's obviously, as a domestic guy, you're going to get linked with the Dalton Smiths, the Adam Azims. Out of those two, do you have a preference who you'd prefer to fight? I know Dalton's got his world title shot at the moment, so we'll see what happens with that. But if you had a choice tomorrow to fight either one of them, who would you choose?
He's Dalton because he has more to offer. You know, if I beat Dalton, I'm world champion, or I'll fight for world title. But I beat Adam Azim, it may be for a European title or something. So there's more at stake to beat Dalton. I do think they're both tough fights. They're both very, they're very hard punchers and they're technically very good. I do believe Dalton Smith's a better fighter though. I think Dalton Smith's a better fighter than Adam Azim. I think Adam Azim carries a lot of power, but his boxing ability wouldn't be as good as Dalton Smith's. And I think Dalton Smith, he deserves to be at world level. And he's potentially going to win a world title here. So if I had a choice tomorrow, who I would fight would be Dalton Smith. And it's only because of what would be at stake.
How do you think he's going to do against Sabrina Matias?
I think he wins. I think he wins. He's, as I said, he's a world level operator and he carries power and he's had a harder run of fights than what Adam Azim has had. He's had harder opponents. He's beat the harder opponents. He's performed very well, and I think Dalton Smith will win a world title. And you know what? Rightly so, he deserves it.
Mm. So the message is basically if well, ideally Dalton Smith wins that and then he defends against you.
Yeah, it would be ideal, but I mean, I understand boxing. I know how it works, and I know the ins and outs of it. They're never going to fight me. It's just a hard fight. It'd be different if I had a world title of my own, and a different governing body. Then he would fight me for, unification. But other than that, they'll fight a bigger name, which makes more money, like the likes of Regis Prograis or something like that. But he's finished. But he's got, he's still ranked very high. He's just come off a win against Jojo Diaz and a fight like that for Dalton Smith. I understand promotions. I know how they work it. They want to get you the easiest fights with the biggest names with the most money possible, and that's how it works.
At this stage for you, do you think you might have to take some kind of gamble and fight? Maybe say you're looking like an Oscar Duarte who won the other night, getting with him, and that would get you towards that world title shot. Are you willing to fight someone
Yeah,
like
well,
him?
I would fight Oscar Duarte in the morning as well. That's another step in the right direction. I firmly believe I would beat him as well without boxing. Um, Good fighter. I was actually asked to fight him before, but it was only on a week. I was on a week's notice, and the fight was in LA, so it wasn't possible. Like you either give me a week's notice. He was actually supposed to fight previous Prograis, I think, and Prograis got injured, and they've asked me to step in on a week's notice, and I couldn't do it. It was like I can't fly from here to LA tomorrow and fight 4 5. Like I'm not a journeyman. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
If you give me 3 or 4 weeks' notice, yes, no sweat, but not a week's notice.
Mm.
So they're the types of names that push you right into the top 10, and as I said, I firmly believe I'll beat these guys.
Just on Barboza, because you said his dad initially said about the rematch. It never really got discussed again. He's obviously coming off a loss. Would that fight make sense if it was offered for you or not?
100%. I would love to amend that loss. I love to push things right. I know like that as I said this before, it wasn't a fluke. It wasn't a fluke that I beat him. I beat him because I will beat him every day of the week. I have his number. I know what he does. I know what he does well. I know how to stop him from doing what he does well, and I'll beat him 7 days a week. And I think he knows that. So I don't think they would ever give me a rematch.
Mm. Just looking at the other guys in the division. Is there anyone else that you want to call out? Anyone else that you think would be a good fight
Well,
for you?
all the 140 fighters seem to be talking about moving up the welterweight. You've got Jack Carroll's about the welterweight. You've got Teofimo Lopez talking about moving the welterweight. Ryan Garcia talking about moving the welterweight. You have Richard Hitchens talking about moving the welterweight. So it's going to leave the 140 division wide open if they all scramble up the welterweight for the big fights. Um, so I mean, at the minute, I'm happy to fight anyone who's in the top 10 across any governing body. Like even if it's Liam Paro, Australian, it doesn't matter who it is. Duarte, any of those guys. I mean, Barbozas Jr., another great name. So there's loads and loads of names, loads of names. Shakur Stevenson's talking about moving up to 140, and for me, Shakur Stevenson's the best of the whole lot. He's the best, so he's the hardest challenge, and I would be willing to take that challenge. You know that you have to test yourself against the best fighters. You have to do it, and I believe I give the best fighters a lot of problems. So
How would you
these
do
are the
against
type of names.
Shakur?
Be a great fight. And I know what he does very well, and it's up to me to prevent him from doing that. Like I say before, he can close distance very well. I just think my stage is just very, very wrong for these type of fighters, you know. I
Mm.
faint a lot, I eat my feet a lot, I box, I'm tall and long, I'm skinny, I'm left-hander, and so much elements to it that these people haven't really faced anyone like me before.
Interesting. Just ask you about a couple other fights just coming up next week in Saudi Arabia. Moses Itauma, Dillian Whyte. Who do you think is going to win that?
I think it's a very brave decision for Itauma to take that fight. Dillian Whyte's no pushover. We've all seen him against the best, and he always brings problems. But Itauma's he's very skillful. He's very very skillful, very hard puncher, and he's very accurate. And I just think Itauma he, he's very different from the rest of the prospects that were coming up in British boxing. You know, he's better. He's better than all the previous prospects. He carries that power and he has that timing. So I think the comment does he does a number on Dillian Whyte. I think he'll probably stop him.
Mm. And Canelo against Crawford. Who do you think wins that?
Crawford. I'm a big fan of Crawford, and probably my favorite fighter at the minute. Him and Shakur Stevenson are probably my two favorite fighters. I admire their style. I admire how they box, and I admire how they do things their way. And I just think he's the most all-round fighter out there at the moment. Terence
Mm.
Crawford, and I think he'll win. You know.
Lastly, all Irish welterweight rematch between Crocker and Donovan. What do you think of that fight, the rematch?
Well, as I was at the first fight. I sat ringside for the first fight, and I think this time it's gonna have to be a lot different. Lewis Crocker needs to change his tactics. The tactics were just, and I know people were talking about like Paddy was a bit dirty with the elbow or a bit dirty with the head and all this shit, but let's take all that away from it. Lewis Crocker still underperformed, you know. I've seen him perform a lot better than that. His boxing ability is a lot better than that. And Paddy Donovan's a great fighter. He punches hard, and I just think that Paddy Donovan is always going to be given that performance. Lewis Crocker cannot give the same performance again, or it's going to be the same night. He'll
Mm.
lose. He'll lose if he doesn't raise up. Paddy Donovan, he's very hard to beat, very hard to hit, very tricky, very skillful. It's up to Lewis. This is probably the first time in Lewis's career where he's going to have to stop relying on his power and just focus on boxing. If he wants to compete in that fight, he needs to just take the power element out of it and just focus on boxing and being in that, using his IQ rather than just swinging and throwing power shots.
Mm. Cool. Sean, appreciate your time. You say you're back September, hopefully. So we'll look forward to seeing who you fight. Hopefully, you get your big fight. Tell everyone where to follow you.
Yes. Well, listen, thank you for having me on, firstly, and hopefully some good news this week with a good title fight at stake, and we'll take it from there.
Where do people follow you on social?
Social media, Sean Mccomb on Instagram, Sean Mccomb on, TikTok. TikTok's just a bit of crack. I'm always on messing around on that. There's nothing boxing related on TikTok. But want to follow the journey, want to follow the podcast, get on the Sean Mccomb's Instagram, and you'll see all the crack is in there. That's where the madness happens.
There you go. Check that out, Sean. Good luck with everything. Speak to you soon.
Cheers, thanks.